I witnessed my son's first night up close. Be sure to listen to the full story and subscribe to the channel for the next story. After the death of my husband, there was an incompleteness in my life, and this loneliness was eating me up. I was bored lying in my house all day. My 4 sons would leave for work in the morning and return home at night. All the household chores were the responsibility of all the servants. How could I overcome my loneliness alone? Then the thought of getting my children married started coming to my mind, and I thought that in the evening I would talk about marriage with the eldest and youngest sons, Ajmal and Akmal, and bring 2 brides to my house. I went inside after thinking all this, and the servants informed me that someone had come from a long way away and they were telling me that they were their relatives. I said, "Okay, then send them inside too so I can see who my own has returned today after many years." I was sitting on the floor, putting my feet on the floor while talking to the servant. When they came in after so long, my eyes widened when I saw them. They were my brothers-in-law and sisters-in-law. How could they think of us after so many years? I was stunned. My heart was pounding. Surely there must be something. Otherwise, even after my brother's death, this brother did not return. So how come today? They both sat in front of me and started crying and said, "Brother, we agree. There had been a lot of distance between us, but you alienated us so much that you did not even tell us about my brother's death." My brother-in-law was crying as he spoke to me, and my brother-in-law's eyes were staring at the 4 of us and my luxurious house. I also started crying after seeing the drama of these 2 and said, "But you did not come. We did it. You people did it. Even after my brother's death, you people did not even lay a hand on his orphan children." I had already received the information, and when they came, the elders came and started talking. I was talking with a frown, but my brother-in-law said nothing. But my brother-in-law is Kashan. Before that, he often said something. His wife had put her hand on his hand and made him shut up. I was shocked after hearing the incomplete story. I don't know what those people were saying about my Kashan. In any case, I still didn't want to have any contact with them. After my husband's death, I had no connection with them anymore. "Go away from here. What are you doing here? Years ago, you people had pushed us out of our house and had deprived us of all wealth and fame." I had spread this lie and started humiliating these people so that they would run away from here and never be hurt by my bitter words again. I had gone too far in insulting them. After so long, these people had stood up and were starting to go back in anger. But as soon as the door was closed, they had met Mirabita's respect and he started to be happy as soon as he saw them. "Auntie, when did you people come? Why are you leaving so soon? We haven't even met the 4 of us yet. And you have come after so many years. So how can we let you go so soon?" But Kashan, seeing the expressions on their faces, made me feel happy. He was staring at me angrily and he understood that it was because of me that they were leaving for home. I didn't even say, "Off," to my brother, and both my brothers and sisters were crying and said, "Your mother humiliated us. It was not enough that now you have come and we are waiting for our brothers so that you can humiliate us one by one." As soon as we heard the news of our brother's death, we immediately ran away in anguish. But what did we know that you people are sitting on our honor with all your heart? Chalwar Shadman didn't want to stop for a moment and immediately took the hand of the Chinese girl and left, leaving Kashan Mir Amna alone. But without saying anything, I got up from there and turned to go to my room, and then the matter was settled there. The next morning, at breakfast, when we were all sitting together and having breakfast, I had brought up the topic of marriage with Ajmal and Akmal and had firmly said that I would take my 2 daughters-in-law of my own free will. Everyone who came laughed after hearing my words. We were very happy, but Kashan was very quiet about yesterday's talk. He had not mentioned this to anyone at home that his uncle and aunt had come to his house yesterday, but his attitude towards me was a little stiff. On the other hand, I had started looking for daughters-in-law and I had my eye on one beautiful and wealthy girl after another and was waiting for the time when something would happen and I would tie a garland on the head of my 2 children and leave for the next wedding. Then Allah had listened to me. Fortunately, I had found both rich and beautiful daughters-in-law and I had started the preparations for Ajmal and Akmal's wedding with great enthusiasm. Not a single day went by when some song was not played in the house. From the day the talk of marriage started in the house, I used to gather the girls of the neighborhood at night and would sing beautifully, dreaming of the children's wedding in my eyes. And then on those happy days too. The wedding dates of my 2 children had been fixed and I was getting worried about taking the procession. Then one day I had told Kashan that the next number is yours and I have already told you that I will bring your wife as per my wish. She is rich and beautiful. But Kashan had turned his face and said clearly that he should not get married. Yes, you can think about Ashgar. I was shocked to see Kashan's aloof attitude and started wondering why he had started objecting to marriage so much, and nowadays it is not the same as before but has changed. But this matter was again pushed aside and during the wedding festivities, the whole house was full of people celebrating. Kashan and Ashgar also did not let any deficiency in the wedding celebrations of their brothers and everything was done in a very luxurious manner. All the arrangements were also done to a high standard and since both the daughters-in-law's families were also rich, they kept everything according to their own wishes. The dowry was the property of the daughters. I shared equally, ornaments, etc. Everything was fine. What did I lack? I also did everything with all my heart for the happiness of the children. Both the wedding processions ended with great pomp and show and Ajmal and Akmal had happily sent their respective brides home. New joys had come to my house. Now, my mother-in-law, who had become my mother-in-law, was going to walk in this house again and I was going to walk proudly with my head held high. But then something happened that I had never imagined in my mind and imagination. It happened that 2 years had passed since the weddings and Ajmal had a son in his lap and Akmal had a daughter in his lap. Masha Allah, the cries of children had started echoing in my house too. After that, I had only one wish left, to be able to feed Ashgar and Kashan's children in my lap before I died. Therefore, I had stopped mentioning Ashgar and Kashan's marriage in the house and also had a girl for Kashan. I had started searching but Kashan said that if he did not marry the girl of his choice, he would remain a bachelor. Miradal was deeply hurt that Miradal's son was raising his eyes in front of me today and saying this. I kept quiet and started getting angry with Kashan. Then one day Akmal and Ajmal came and sat next to me and took my hands in theirs and started explaining to me lovingly that for Kashan's happiness, mother, you should listen to him and give up your stubbornness. But how could I bear it? Today, my children are no longer mine, on whom I had always been scolding. Both of them started explaining that mother, give up your stubbornness. Now, time is not the same as before. Everything has changed and you have already seen the end of the 2 daughters-in-law of your choice by bringing them. Now, stop it. We did not want anyone else to hurt your heart. I kept quiet for a moment thinking about Kashan's happiness and started thinking about Ajmal and Akmal's wives. How much I longed for them. I had married them both and brought them home, but after they came home, the house was no longer the same as before. In the end, I had agreed for Kashan's happiness. I had no objection to the marriage of his choice. I had an objection to the relationship that he had created for himself. In the end, I had agreed to Ajmal and Akmal's words, and once again, I had agreed to bring Kashan's bride home, and Kashan had no place for happiness since he had heard the news of his own free will to marry, but Kashan had already crossed the line. He had decided that he would not perform any unnecessary rituals and would simply bring his bride home by arranging a marriage. I was disappointed again, but I had kept quiet now because all this was going well for me, because I never wanted to set foot in this house, and I had kept quiet only because of Kashan. Meanwhile, I had decorated the entire house beautifully like a bride. The entire house was sparkling with lights when Kashan was about to bring his bride home. The car of these people had arrived outside the house, and I was more anxious to meet my son than my daughter-in-law. I don't know why I loved Kashan the most. He was the one who was dear to Mir Asb and the one who was dear to me. When Ajmal and Akmal got out of the car and my eyes were still searching for Kashan, and when Kashan started to take his bride out of the car and take her out of the car, I was shocked that maybe my Kashan would be away from me because of this girl. And I could not let that happen. Mir Awal started pushing hard. Kashan started holding her and bringing her inside. As soon as he came in front of me, he said, "She is very heavy, so she is having a little difficulty." I had put it off with a smile, but both my daughters-in-law's faces were pale due to the new bride coming to the house. They felt that the reason was that she would no longer be as important as she was. But I would never let all that happen in my house, which happened in my in-laws' house years ago after the death of my mother-in-law. I had to keep all 4 of my sons in my hands. Ajmal and Akmal were my very obedient children, but Kashan and Ashgar were a little innocent and not understanding. Kashan had now married this girl and brought her home as his wife. Mir Awal was constantly trembling with fear, not knowing what Mir would do next, if he listened to this girl. Kashan and his wife had gone to their room. After telling the servants, I sent the food to their room. I was pacing around in my room worriedly, thinking that his wife was that girl, so beautiful and handsome. Mir Awal was scared because she had expressed her desire to take Kashan's backside even before coming home, and Akmal had happily given Kashan his lower backside. I was worried that this girl would do whatever she wanted by putting a gun on Kashan's shoulder. She was already 2 daughters-in-law short of this one. And this was mine. I had thought that night that no, I will never let this happen, and I will not let Kashan be away from me or my brothers. I will always keep this daughter-in-law down. I was worried all night, thinking and waiting for the morning to come. When the morning would come, I immediately explained to her all the rules of this house as soon as the bride went into the room. It was about to come and all the family members had woken up and were busy with their own work. But Kashan and his bride had not come for breakfast yet. Both the daughters-in-law had also started talking against her and making fun of her. I immediately got up in anger and went to my daughter-in-law's room. I thought that if she was late in getting up the first day, then in the future she would also sleep for a long time and do her own will and like her daughters-in-law. I did not wake her up. I was in her room. As soon as I saw her, the ground under my feet disappeared, and immediately in my mind it occurred to me that yesterday was the first night of the wedding, and Kashan had not done her any injustice or any kind of revenge. When this happened to my daughter-in-law, I sat there holding her head. She could not even get up from her bed. I removed the sheet and held it in my hand. She kept saying, "Mummy, please listen to me for once." Her face showed clear fear and terror. This was the first time I felt sorry for her. In such a long time, I don't know what terrible thoughts were coming to my mind about Kashan. If this was all Kashan's injustice, I was ready to hand her over to the police myself. I didn't listen to my daughter-in-law and secretly called the servants, put her in the car and immediately brought her to the hospital. I told the servants not to let anyone in the house worry that my daughter-in-law brought her to the hospital like me and got her examined by the lady doctor. She immediately said, "Oh, your daughter-in-law. Now she will never be able to stand up because she has already said, 'Mother, listen to me once. Then I will accept whatever punishment you give me.' But it is true that my parents hid this from the family and you did not know anything about it." But Kashan was not completely unaware of this truth. He knew everything. As soon as I heard this, my heart started pounding, thinking that Kashan had cheated me so much, that I had left my daughter-in-law there and returned home alone. Kashan started shouting loudly as soon as she came home. Ajmal and Akmal had immediately called Kashan and called him home. As soon as they saw Mir Agsa, everyone understood that there must be something very big, that mother is getting angry with her again after so many years. Kashan was standing in front of me with his eyes downcast and was silently enduring Mir Agsa. In such a long time, the daughter-in-law had also reached home and the secret was going to be revealed in front of everyone. What had happened to this girl and Kashan, and this girl had made the whole house a mess. I had kept my family in a state of confusion before I told them something. This girl had revealed her secret to everyone. The whole family was shocked that Kashan had married of her own free will, but that too to a girl who was not worthy of marriage. Days had passed slowly and it had been 3 years since that incident. Whatever had happened in the house that day, Kashan and his daughter-in-law were kept separate from everyone. No one dared to speak to them against my will. Then everything started in my house that had shaken me. The same story was being told in my house that had happened years ago in my in-laws' house, and as I cried, I could only think that I was the reason for all this. The differences that had happened between the brothers in my in-laws' house years ago were the same ones that had started between my 2 daughters-in-law, Ajmal and Akmal, and the same thing had started happening among the children as well. I was very sad when the same girl whom I had accepted as unworthy of Kashan had not been with me for a moment in these 3 years. She did not go away and remained my servant, and she had completely won my heart, and the most important thing was that Kashan also supported her in all of this, and despite a million differences with me, both husband and wife continued to keep their eyes on me. May God have mercy on them. And together they ended the distance between brothers and sisters and did not let what they had seen happen in their childhood years ago happen. Today I realized my mistake deeply and I started crying while apologizing and hugging Kashan and daughter-in-law. They had both saved my house from being destroyed. On the other hand, I had no objection to Kashan marrying the girl of his choice. The objection was that his future wife was none other than my own sister-in-law and the daughter-in-law of my brother-in-law, who had come to my house that day and talked about the relationship. But I had insulted her and thrown her out of the house, and as they were leaving, all those relationships with Kashan were broken. But Kashan had liked this girl since childhood, and then seeing the opportunity, he married the girl of his choice. I talked to him, but he knew that even if I gave up and agreed, I would never be able to accept this truth of this girl because that girl was a rich woman. But today I was not sorry but proud that my son had made the right decision and brought her home in marriage, because this girl had changed my thinking that being rich and beautiful is not everything. Rather, real beauty and wealth are clearly reflected in a person's character. Then even if there was any deficiency given by God, that deficiency was not in this girl, Kashan's wife Hamera, from childhood or from birth. She was also completely normal like ordinary people. Kashan had started liking her and often went to his uncle's house to meet her. But then an accident happened and Hamera's life changed forever. Her fate made her cry tears of blood and brought her parents, who wanted to get their daughter married to Kashan because he was rich. But fate made Hamera fall victim to this accident and her parents were punished for their greed.